and the last and final messenger, and his family, his companions, and all those who follow his way. When the Muslims went to Medina, they immigrated. So the first cohort, so to speak, of Muslims began in Mecca. And after about 13 years of being in Mecca, they were told to immigrate to a city about 400 kilometers north, about 300 miles north, called Medina. Now, the Arabs as a whole, Muslim and non, the Arabs were generally speaking irrelevant to the international community. They were known by the international community. You know, the people in power, societies knew that there were Arabs in the desert in this region, but they were kind of doing their own thing. And the Arabs knew of these civilizations because they would travel, specifically to Damascus, to the north, and to Yemen in the south. Now, Damascus at that time was under the rule of the Romans, the Roman Empire, which was Christian. Yemen was also a very established kingdom. I don't know what the name of the kingdom was, but it was an established kingdom with many Jews and Christians. So it was a religious kingdom with a predominantly Jewish Christian society. And of course, you had tribes in Arabia that were Christian or Jew. So the Arabs knew them. And what they knew of the people of the book, the Jews and the Christians, is that they were people who were more advanced than the Arabs, technologically more advanced, academically more advanced, institutionally more advanced, economically more advanced, militarily more advanced. And so naturally, when the Arabs would interact with these populations every now and then, they developed a perception that the people of the book are superior. Civilizationally, they are superior to the Arabs. And so when the Arab leadership, the political leadership, would disagree over something and they didn't have a resolution to it, they would often get the advice of the people of the book, the Christians and the Jews. Why? Because they perceive them as simply more powerful, more advanced. Now, when the Muslims went to Medina, Medina was a more diverse society. Unlike Mecca, which is one tribe and the same people, Medina was a little bit more diverse. And part of that diversity were the Jewish tribes of Medina. There were a few Jewish tribes there. And when the Prophet ﷺ entered Medina, he met with the Jewish tribes and he recommended an agreement between them. And in sum, the agreement pretty much says what privileges Muslims have will also be extended to the Jews. And what responsibilities are on the Muslims will also be extended upon the Jews. This is the pre-modern way of saying there is equal rights, politically speaking, between the Muslims and the Jews of Medina, right? This is how it began. However, throughout the course of the next few years in the life of the Prophet ﷺ, the Jews or part of the Jewish people would try to undermine the Prophet, peace be upon him, and even attempt to assassinate him. And the reason why they would go about doing it is plenty. I don't have time to get into it. But one of the factors which encouraged them to behave animously towards the Prophet, peace be upon him, are another group of people in Medina who, were playing a type of vicious political game, a two-faced game. And so they would these two-faced individuals go to the Jewish tribe or a Jewish tribe and say, hey, do this to the Prophet, attack, assassinate him, and we're going to be with you. If you lose and they exile you, we're going to leave with you. And if you have to put money to get this done, we're going to put money too. And if you have to fight, we're going to fight with you. They encouraged this. And they attempted, and the attempt was squandered, only leading to what? This Jewish tribe to be exiled by the Prophet ﷺ from Medina. They were kicked out. Right? Now, this is very relevant to what we have going on today. A few days ago, Netanyahu, the Prime Minister of Israel, was invited to Congress to give a talk. This is his fourth talk that he has given to a congressional audience in the course of his political career. And as Muslims are observing this, remember, we're all feeling this. Just to remind ourselves, for the sake of context, for the past 10 months, American Muslims have been working tremendously hard, being patient with the utter and sheer death and destruction that we've been viewing on social media, the injustices, the protests which are falling, or we feel fall on deaf ears, and our government that has been unconditionally providing and supplying this genocidal administration, right, to do whatever they want, pretty much with impunity. This is us, the Muslims. And now this man, this devil, I should say, is given a platform in the House of Congress, which are, or who are our represented officials. We, I mean the American people, elected them. And when you look at this talk, the standing ovations, the clapping that he received is probably longer than the words that he said. In fact, a record 49 standing ovations in a matter of 55 minutes. That's almost one a minute. Unbelievable. And the Muslims are watching this. And Muslims feel disheartened, as though all the effort we've put is utterly meaningless. You see the people in power, the lawmakers sitting right there, who we've been sending, messages to, who we've been, protesting in front of their offices, and they're just sitting there clapping away, standing up, standing up, standing up, standing up. And his speech was terrible. Like, it was laughable, to be quite honest, saying very bizarre things like, it's like chicken to KFC. I mean, what kind of political leader says this nonsense? Muslims feel disheartened. Well, today, dear brothers and sisters, I draw our attention to the 59th chapter of the Quran, which addresses the story, the moment which I began with. This tribe that attempted to assassinate the Prophet ﷺ through the encouragement of another group of people, and they failed. And to begin this conversation, what does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tell the believers? He tells them, مَا ظَنَنْتُمْ أَن يَخْرُجُوا وَظَنُّوا أَنَّ حُصُونَهُمْ مَانِعَتُهُمْ أَنَّهُ مَانِعَتُهُمْ حُصُونُهُمْ مِنَ اللَّهِ. Pay attention to this, because this is relevant. The Quran is talking to us today. Although it's addressing an issue, a moment that has already happened, the lessons are to be paralleled. Allah begins the conversation here by saying, you thought you were defenseless against them. You thought, remember, the Arabs had this inferiority complex when they would look at the people of the book, seeing them as simply more advanced, more powerful. And Allah is saying, you see them as more powerful. You see their fortresses, you see their economic power, you see their political network, their ability to influence and to move. And in light of that, you thought you could do nothing. And they thought the same thing. That tribe thought that their fortresses are going to protect them, that the social or the political network that they had is going to back them up. But what was the end result? What was the end result? They got kicked out. And you know what's so beautiful about what Allah says in these opening verses, right? He says, يُخْرِبُونَ بُيُوتَهُمْ بِأَيْدِيهِمْ وَأَيْدِي الْمُؤْمِنِينَ. He says, they brought upon their own exile. They did it with their own hands, and the Muslims assisted as well. They played a role as well. When you look at what's going on, Netanyahu cannot help himself. His cabinet cannot help themselves except make themselves look like maniacs in front of the public world. And if all that we Muslims do is let him and the criminals around him talk, they're just going to fool themselves. They will blatantly lie. Their lies in front of mainstream media is so blatant and obvious that the very media networks trying to give them a platform to promote them and to make a case for their nonsense and what they're doing cannot but be shocked by their utter audacity. Even this last speech of his, you had members of Congress leaving saying it was distasteful and dishonest. It was a large sum of cliches. It's a bunch of cliches, right? And you have this going on. They are bringing about their own demise. And it's important for us Muslims to understand the parallels so that we don't get discouraged. You see, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, at the end of this initial set of verses, he says, فَاعْتَبِرُوا يَا أُولِي الْأَبْصَارِ. Take the lessons, O believers. Well, if you're taking a lesson for something, you take lessons for what exactly? For something to come in the future. It's as though Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is talking to the Muslims today and saying that what you saw before will happen again. What you saw before is going to happen again. And subhanAllah, when you really look at all the factors playing here, you see it's as though, oh my God, it's just the same. Muslims today, they look at the political, economic, and propaganda power of the Israeli government, and it just seems like this massive fortress that is indestructible. And Muslims are looking, how on earth can we even begin to challenge that? How? And you have all these mainstream networks that are supporting this. You have all these congressional individuals who are bought and they are cheering this on. It will take forever for Democrats and Republicans to come with a bipartisan bill to actually do something useful for the American people. But as soon as AIPAC, the Israeli lobby, wants something done, mashallah, they come together. They come together in record time. And we're sitting there looking, how can we challenge this? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying, you, O believers, thought there's nothing you can do about it. And they thought they were protected and shielded. And what happened in the end? It all fell apart. It all fell apart. You see, who invited this war criminal to Congress? Who was it? Mike Johnson, right? This guy. We know, because all this is public, we know that AIPAC, the Israeli lobby, paid him tremendous amounts of money. They do this to call in favors. Hey, we gave you this money. We'll continue to give you money. Make some room for a meeting with Netanyahu in the Congress. So he comes and he invites Netanyahu and he gets two other people to sign it. And in record time, he has a platform in front of Congress, right? Let's think a little bit about the Speaker of the House. Who is he? What's his background? He is a religious Christian. And what kind of a Christian? Evangelical Christian. And what do evangelicals believe? Why are evangelical Christians who know that the far right administration of Israel encourages Ben Gvir, this minister, he encourages and is on video spitting on Christians, and the abuses that Palestinian Christians have endured in Palestine is equivalent to the Muslims. Yet you have a large segment of practicing Christian America, not all, a particular segment, but they are a large segment that unconditionally supports this. In mega churches, you'll find the Israeli flag being waved. You are you are supporting unconditionally people who spit on Christians and mock Jesus and call him a criminal and a fraud. Why do you do this, Mr. Speaker? Just today, he made a statement against what France did in the Olympics. I don't have time to get into that. Why are they supporting this? Why are they encouraging it? Remember what I said earlier? There was a group within Medina who were telling this Jewish tribe, hey, go do it, assassinate, we're going to help you, we're going to support you. And they were encouraged and they were empowered by that support, right? You have the same thing going on. Israel cannot do what it's doing without the power, the support of a superpower. They cannot. It's in their political strategy. Why is Mike Johnson supporting this nonsense? Why did he give a person whose administration mocks Christians and spits on Christians, why did he give him a platform in the House? Well, you probably already know this. They believe in a prophecy that in order for Jesus to come again, what needs to happen? The third temple needs to be established, right? The third temple needs to be established. And so they support this. And I want you all to go back to Netanyahu's speech before he started talking. When he shook the hand of Mike Johnson, look at the look in each of their eyes. Look at the look in each of their eyes. Netanyahu looks at him, you are my, lapdog. I can make you do what I want because I give you money. But he also knows that all he needs to do is disavow him, and Netanyahu's done. And Mike Johnson has this look in his eyes. At least I'm reading into it, maybe. But he has this look in his eyes, saying, we are using you, and when the time is right, we will do away with you when Jesus comes back. It's truly unbelievable. But we have to acknowledge these moments, these realities, because the Quran talks about it. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, كَمَثَلِ الَّذِينَ مِنْ قَبْلِهِمْ قَرِيبًا, like the people who came before, Allah is talking to the Prophet, peace be upon him, and the companions, in light of the misconduct and the treason of this tribe, right? Allah says, like the people who just passed, like you defeated, O Prophet and believers, like you defeated your enemies, you will defeat them. Now let's look at our times today. Israel is a colonial project. It's a continuation of colonialism, right? What happened over the past few months in a country called, I believe, Mali? Does anyone keep track of this? What happened? Who was there who shouldn't be there? I think Mali. Was it Mali or Ghana or in West Africa? The French were there. France was there. And what did this country do? They ordered them out. They got kicked out. Recently, look, Muslims, see what happened? And, unfortunately, our own country, the whole debacle in Iraq and Afghanistan, the utter nonsense that was pushed by right-wing, Christians, conservatives, pushed. Gotta go Saddam. And you remember Bush when he said this is the crusade of our time. Remember that? Yeah? And what happened after 20 years of that violence and death and destruction? Iraq is viewed by all Americans as a disaster. And when they pulled out of Afghanistan, it was a humiliation. This wasn't decades ago. This was yesterday. Not literally yesterday. This was recently. We all saw with our own eyes. Like the people before, this will happen to any and all criminals. Any and all criminals. By the way, if Muslims do this, it will happen to them. Just to be clear, we're not these righteous people who are immune to corruption and criminality. But the idea is when we look at this monster in Congress, we see the lessons and we don't get disheartened because the Quran is telling us this is how you deal with it. Right? كَمَثَلِ الشَّيْطَانِ. And Allah gives us, like the shaitan, he comes And he encourages someone, hey, disbelieve and I'll be there with you. You'll have this and you'll have that. And when they actually disbelieve, the shaitan says, I have nothing to do with you. I'm gone. I'm gone. And we see this slowly happening. And of course, we can't, the point here isn't to endorse anyone. The point here isn't to say Democrats are better than Republicans or whatnot. It's to understand the dynamics. You have Biden, who had to step out of the race, right? And he made that speech, or I'm passing the torch. He's not passing the torch. He was ousted. Why was he ousted? Because he lost the support of his own base because of his support for this genocide, right? Do you know who the last president to have to step out of the race was? No. Who had to step out of the race? He didn't run for re-election. Lyndon B. Johnson, right? And do you know why he stepped out of the race? Because of Vietnam. Because of Vietnam. We have all these examples to show us what? The lessons. It repeats itself over and over and over again. We think Israel, these war criminals, I should say, right? This current administration is unstoppable, and the West will always and continue to support them, and there's nothing we can do about it. When in reality, we have lesson after lesson after lesson where it ends very bleakly for these criminals and these tyrants. And in the meantime, dear brothers and sisters, what do? We push forward, but how? How do we push forward? And this is the conclusion of this chapter. All the chapters intertwined, interrelated. What do we do? Because I could sit here and talk about how bad Netanyahu is and how shameful the stance of Biden's stance towards this issue has been. And we could be hopeful about what's to come next, or we can be very, hopeless about what's to come next. But that's not the strategy of the Quran. Rather, the strategy of the Quran is, hey, what can we do? It's proactive. It's not just reactive. It's about progress. It's not just about blaming and shaming and pointing fingers. What can we do? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala comes and says, Ya ayyuha alladhina amanu taqullah wal tanzur nafsu ma qaddamat lighad wattaqullaha inna Allaha khabirun bima ta'malun. In light of the criminals that are just ruling the world today, what do? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, O you who believe, be conscious of Allah. Be aware of Allah. Be conscious of Him. Think about Him. And prepare. Think about. Contemplate. Look as though you are literally looking at it. The day that comes tomorrow. Meaning, the day of judgment. The day of accountability. Be conscious of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. What is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala saying here? He is giving us the root of our power, the root of human power. See, the human being is very unique, very interesting. And I say that in a good way, by the way. I say that in a beautiful way. We truly are a beautiful creation. Allah created us in a beautiful way. And part of that beauty is that He created us with desires. It is normal to desire certain things, to desire food, to desire marriage, to desire children, to desire wealth. It's normal. It's part of our well-being. But what's very interesting is that our desires can also be the spiritual, moral, ethical death of the human being. In fact, desires can make a respectful individual end up a scoundrel, an absolute scoundrel. Subhanallah. One day, there was a point in time where Netanyahu and Hitler and the Pharaoh were infants. They were babies, innocent children playing. They had parents who loved them. They had parents who looked at them with love, or maybe they didn't. I don't know. Maybe that's why they turned out to be crazy. The idea is they were babies. If you were to see them, you would give them a smile and love unconditionally because they are children. And then they became the monsters that history has deemed them to be, correctly so. What happened? What happened was the human being without Allah is left to their own desires, and when desires are left unchecked, they become monsters. They become monsters. There are monsters who are Muslims, and there are monsters who are Christians, and there are monsters who are Jewish, and there are monsters who are atheists, and there are monsters who are Hindu, and it goes on and on and on. And what they all have in common is their pursuit for their own desires, whether that desire be wealth, power, fame, whatever it is, they're all the same. And take it from Uncle Bernie Sanders. He said that these billionaires, he's always about the billionaires, rightfully so. He said these billionaires are okay with giving up democracy if that makes them more money. Think about that. Think about that. Look at the extent of corruption. They are willing to betray the very core of this country and society. 330 million people they are willing to put under the bus if that means making them more money. That's how it is. And we Muslims aren't immune to that. And so when we face criminals, the first thing we need to do is to make sure we don't end up like criminals like them. Because there are a lot of lessons that are exactly that. When you look at Syria, for example, once who was in Syria? The French left Syria, and there were protests going on. There was a man by the name of Hafid Assad who became very popular in Syrian society because he called to freedom, and he called to this, and he called to revolution, and only to become an even worse tyrant than people who were before him. Unbelievable. We must protect ourselves from the very corruption that infested these people because we're not immune to it. And the way we do it is through being conscious with Allah. If we want to face criminals, the first step is to connect ourselves, our hearts to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Ittaqullah. Be conscious of Allah. And the way you increase, you strengthen your consciousness of Allah is by making the next life your focus. Your focus. وَلْتَنْظُرْ نَفْسٌ مَا قَدَّمَتْ لِغَدٍ. And the wording here is incredible. The wording here is incredible. And to avoid the exact translation, to give you the meaning here, what it's saying is, be aware that the next life will bring you as an individual on a day where you see everything falling apart. Everything you have ever known is falling apart in front of you. The sun is imploding. The moon is sundering. The mountains are evaporating. The oceans are exploding. And in the midst of all that, you will come by yourself. No superpower there with you. No mom or dad. No brother. No new Muslims community. None of that. You're coming alone. And so who do you need more than Allah? Nobody. Who can do you more than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Who can harm you more than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? It's all about you. And when you look at the politics, it's all about that intertwined network. I need this person. I need to exploit that person. I can put that person on the bus. I need to go to that person. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, man, that's part of the corruption. And we all know it's not new. One of the reasons why our government is becoming increasingly ineffective and Americans are becoming increasingly frustrated by their elected officials is because they represent the interests of the donor class. We know this. We know this. And so that disconnect is created and the corruption is there because the donor class, they have their own agenda. They want something out of this. And what they want is more money. And they do it at the expense of broader American society. No problem to them. Right? And the politicians are too scared. Well, if I won't win re-election if I criticize Israel. I won't win re-election. I won't get donations if I don't do exactly what my donors want me to do. Islam comes and says, hey, wait a minute. I'm going to disconnect you from all of those forces and influences by reminding you who's really in charge and who you really need the most. Because, man, it really goes a long way to know and to believe that Allah is the one who provides you, not any donor. And it's really comforting to the believer to hear the verse, if they turn away, Allah will bring someone else to support you. He tells the Prophet, if those who are following you or those who you are calling to Islam leave you, Allah will bring you another person or another people. Because there's a lot of people and there's a lot of resources. Taqwa of Allah is about realizing your need for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that is how we face the criminals, and we keep going by remembering that day. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَلَا تَكُونُوا كَالَّذِينَ نَسُوا اللَّهَ فَأَنْسَاهُمْ أَنفُسَهُمْ أُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الْفَاسِقُونَ. Don't be like those who forgot Allah, meaning they left Allah, they neglected Allah. They didn't make decisions based on Allah's considerations. You know, I don't know if any of you know evangelicals, if you come from that, background. I really have a question for them. I have a question for them. When Jesus comes back, as we Muslims believe, and these evangelicals, if you were to tell Jesus, we gave money, we fueled a people who mocked you, who disgraced you, who tried to disgrace you, who spit on your followers, who killed innocents left and right. We fuel that to bring you back. I want to know, do they really think Jesus will be pleased with that? Honestly, I want to know. I want them to answer me. These pastors of these mega churches, this makes Jesus happy? This pleases him? Would he do this? They always come to us. Muhammad was about war. He's a warlord and he killed and he fought and Jesus didn't touch anyone except us. We're going to go ahead and kill millions of people to bring him back. How does this work? Nasullah, they neglected Allah. And you have bin Ghafir, this minister, who's a far right. And you have Netanyahu, they wear their what's that called? The yarmulkes. Yeah? They wear it. And they're all religious about it. And they sit there standing in front of the world, lying and killing and pillaging, and they say we're the chosen people. Right? And as one sheikh put it, these rabbis, they allow the killing of children. They allow the robbery and the pillaging. They allow the rape of women. And there are rabbis on video who say this. What does this imam say? He says, if the rabbis allow this, what role does Satan have left to play? What is there left for him to do? What? They have neglected Allah, and they have the audacity to invoke the names of prophets and the name of God. Netanyahu came and said, we are the lineage of Abraham. Abraham wasn't a Jew, he wasn't a Christian. He came before Judaism, he came before Christianity. And he is free from you. Abraham literally means the merciful father. This is a man who argued with the angels so that they don't punish the people of Lot. And he, Netanyahu, wants to come and say, we're the lineage of Abraham. They neglected Allah. Look at the corruption there. So you believers, don't neglect, don't forget Allah. Because if you forget Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, if you leave Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allah will leave you. فَأَنْسَاهُمْ أَنفُسَهُمْ أُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الْفَاسِقُونَ. And when we are left to the self, we become a very easy prey for Satan. You know, Netanyahu's behavior is exactly like Satan. I'm not talking about the actions. I'm talking about the mentality. All of America, I'm talking about the American politicians, they all know Netanyahu is squandering any ceasefire resolution. Why? So that he prolongs his stay in office, because he knows as soon as this war is done, he's going to jail. Isn't that what Satan did? He told God, look, I know I'm doomed So can you let me live till the end of time? Like, he knows he's going to hellfire. And so he's finding anything he can do to prolong his existence on this earth, because he knows what's inevitably coming. And all this is because of what? They neglected Allah. They neglected him. And look at the monsters that have come out of these individuals. And look at atheists, Hitler and these guys. Right? The biggest mass murderers in all of human history. They weren't Christians. They weren't Jews. They weren't Muslims. They were atheists. Those who neglect Allah, they abandon Allah, are left to their own desires, and desires are unsatiable. You can never satiate it. You can never satisfy it. And we Muslims, we need to be very aware of this, because we are desire-driven as well. And we have that urge to satisfy those desires. And our failure to address this issue goes back to our failure to have consciousness of Allah, and as a result, pursue our own desires. Have you ever looked at Muslim Instagram accounts? Have you ever looked at them? Yeah? Have you ever looked at what these young Muslim men and women are doing on Instagram? And look, in comparison to other things, it's not nearly as bad, right? But we have our flaws. We really do. And if we think we can be a source of inspiration, hope, and light for all of humanity without the proper background of consciousness of Allah and duty to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then we're really in for a treat. Because the only thing that got us in this mess that we're in today is the fact that we neglected Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that's a topic for another lecture, how we got here. Right? And there's one more point in this regard. One more point. And that is the human being, when they have taqwa of Allah, when they are dutiful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, from a psychological perspective, from a strategic perspective, it keeps us focused on the goal. It keeps us in touch with the goal, with the strategy, what we are meant to be, what we are meant to do. And know that when a society falls, or a government falls, or a corporation falls, you can always trace it back to that society, that people, that corporation, that government getting off course from their original goal, from their original strategy, from their original vision and idea. And the human being falls off course when we become desire-driven. So don't be like that. And then the last point for today's talk. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, لا يستوي أصحاب النار وأصحاب الجنة أصحاب الجنة هم الفائزون. The people of hellfire and the people of paradise aren't the same. They're not the same. And this is giving the believer perspective. When you look at someone like Netanyahu, I think we can all agree where this man is going to end up in the afterlife. I think so. Except if Allah has a different plan, Allah is able to do all things. But the current course he is in, he's going to end up in hellfire. And when we look at this man standing in front of Congress, making this theater of standing ovations, all staged, right? Instead of looking at the people around him and the cheers and the claps, look at him and say, that's a person of hellfire. And the people of Palestine are people of paradise. That's perspective. And it's this perspective that keeps us on course. It keeps our frustration at bay and prevents our frustration and anger from getting the most out of us or causing us to make less than best decisions. They're not the same. And so the believer's fuel when facing criminals is to always remember the true ends, where we will end up. And that some people will end up in hellfire, some people will end up in paradise. And therefore, if my pursuit to stop these criminals, whether in a minor way or a major way, the only thing that it leads to is me getting to paradise, then is it worth it? If all my efforts don't really do anything to change the situation, but it does lead me to paradise, is it worth it? The answer is, of course, yes. Because that's the goal. That's the goal right there. So don't be fooled by the theater that was shown in front of the world the other day. It was a theater. People paid to clap, and people to fill the seats. And all the cultural, nonsense that he tried to throw, the world isn't buying it. They're really not. And when you look at the comments of independent journalists, you'll find that he himself knows he's doomed. So keep going forward. We are on the right path, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala. This is nothing new to the Muslim experience, and we have examples from times before. And what goes around comes around, and history does repeat itself because human beings repeat themselves. A day will come where the world will be more stable, the world will be calmer, and prosperity, inshallah, will be more generally distributed across the globe. And I'm not saying a fantasy. This has happened in human history. After times of instability, or during times of instability, wonderful people from Muslims and Jews and Christians come together, work hard for the betterment and the enrichment of human society. It is a tough road, it is a difficult road, it is a frustrating road, it is a road full of sacrifice and sadness, but it is a road that will inevitably lead to something better for all of us. It's happened before, and it will happen again. And I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allow these verses to be a source of guidance and light for us, a source of inspiration for us. Allahumma ameen. With that, I conclude, and I thank you all for listening to me blabber on for however long.
Give it up for our dear Sheikh Tariq Atta. Sheikh Tariq, oh, it's beautiful, man. You look around, you just kind of scan the room to see their attention span, and it's just glued to you and what you're saying.
People were yawning on this side right here. I'm just kidding.
Well, I know on this side, Michelle, we were,
I'm just kidding, by the way.
And by the way, again, I have said this before, but I really appreciate everyone taking notes as well, whether it's through your laptop, your phones, mental notes. Of course, I'm sure you will document those on paper later on, but it's really good when you have these sessions as you listen to also document and kind of gather your thoughts on that laptop or notebook, whatever you do to retain that. So Sheikh Tariq, as always, may Allah reward you and bless you. Phenomenal. Thank you so much. I myself, to your point, 49 ovations that they gave.
It was a 55-minute speech.
Literally one every minute. I also wanted to calculate, I don't know, I'm sure somebody will do it in terms of how long that ovation was, right? Like 10, 15, 20, somewhere like probably over a minute. Mm-hmm. I was disgusted. I was just so disgusted. Yeah. And the hypocrisy of what they were saying, right? What he was saying, just the hypocrisy.
Utter hypocrisy, man.
And they don't show outside the protests that actually were happening outside, right? Against Netanyahu, the criminal. So, well, thank you so much, Sheikh Tariq. As always, I appreciate it. So let's go ahead and open up the floor for any questions, comments, suggestions, anything of that nature, of course. And of course, if it's okay with Sheikh Tariq, we open up the QA to general QA as well. If you didn't get a chance to ask on Friday, we can ask that as well. But let's start off with the topic. Any questions per the topic, if it's okay. All right, perfect. I'll get the mic.
Assalamu alaikum, Sheikh Tariq. It's always great to have you, and I definitely needed that. In the community of Orange County, we are surrounded by evangelical churches. We're also surrounded by a lot of white Christian nationals, a lot of Asian churches that are also evangelicals. And it seems that there seems to be some sort of coordinated effort, in my opinion, as far as Muslims are concerned, where we are they try and either police us or marginalize us or intimidate us. I'm having an issue because it's making me, after so many years, extremely angry at the complacency with the police department or the fire department or whomever. We matter, but because we're surrounded and entrenched with these really radicalized churches, it's problematic. How do we, or even me personally, how do I go about that without, because if I do the things that they have done towards me or towards the community, then, it's a problem. It looks like Muslim extremism. Mm-hmm. But they seem to keep getting away with such harassing behavior.
Yeah. So first of all, I like this. I prefer the strategy of case by case, a case by case approach. What do I mean by that? What I mean by that is, while I made a pretty general comment about evangelicals' belief to the second coming of Jesus, the way we should challenge that narrative, I think, needs to be looked at church by church. So, for example, my community has had a long relationship with a local evangelical, very big church, and that relationship has been positive because the leadership was good, right? The leadership, while of course, like personally, I'm not offended by Christians who evangelize. Like, if you believe in something, then I find it as quite normal, and in fact, quite part of the sincerity that you want other people to be a part of that. Right? So evangelizing in of itself is not concerning in terms of the question of radicalization, nor does a person's belief or a church's belief that Jesus' second coming, it comes after the third temple, mean that they are warmongers or anything like that. Let's be very clear here. So I would look at it case by case, church by church, and always try to take the approach of, hey, let's get to know one another before it becomes more aggressive, because that's what the Quran says. تعالوا قل تعالوا تعالوا إلى كلمة سواء. Let's come to a common word. Let's discuss this. And you'll find those who are like that, right? Now, another thing that Muslims can do to challenge this narrative is by building relationships with non-evangelical churches. Some strands of Christianity are much more open to diversity and whatnot. And to us, it's not a question of who's Orthodox Christian or not. That's not for us to determine. But these are people who are of the cloth, so to speak. So let's build relationships with them. This way we have a type of coalition that we can't be singled out as anti-Christian people. No, wait a minute. We have friendships with all these different churches, and we work with them, and we break bread together. You can't do that with us. So that's another thing. But I do believe that Muslims, I'm not aware of it. If somebody knows, do let me know. I'm not aware that Muslims have actually challenged this narrative of Jesus' second coming being the result of the third temple being established. Because from what I've heard, that's a very American evangelical thing. Like, other Christians in the world don't believe this. But I haven't seen Muslims actually challenge this, and I think it's about time we do.
I had someone ask me a question about what type of Muslim are you? Are you Sunni or Shia? Like, I thought it was only one Muslim, and it's not good to divide.
That's right.
So,
Right. So if you wanna, there are people who will identify themselves as Shia, right? And if you are not Shia, then you are Sunni. Now, what Allah wants Muslims to do is to unite, right? Not to be divided. Don't become like previous religions that became sects and that they're all attacking each other. Just today so I got into a doctorate program in theology, and I was filling out the kind of confirmation form, and they ask you, what religion are you? And you go through this like 100 category list. It was like all Christian. I'm like, what is all of this going on, right? We don't want to be like that. Now, is there a difference between Shiites and Sunnis? Yes, there's some differences that can be considered as somewhat significant, but not to the extent where the foundational beliefs are altered. Right? It's not like how some strands of Christianity believe in the Trinity. Some believe that Jesus is God. Some believe Jesus is the Son of God. Some believe that Mary is the mother of God. And some believe that Jesus is a prophet. We don't have that kind of division. Sunnis, Shiites, whatever, they all believe that God is one, that the most important aspect of the religion is monotheism. The Quran is the word of God, and that Muhammad is the last final messenger. Right? So that is the foundation of the religion that we're all in agreement with. So if somebody asks you, say I'm Muslim. I don't get into that stuff.
Thank you. Before we take the next question, I just wanted to echo what Sheikh Tariq is saying into Sister Rhonda's question. Particularly here at IOC, I think that's one of the reasons why they established the outreach program in hopes of getting the message of Islam out and having conversations with people of other faiths or no faiths, right? Because that conversation sometimes is not happening, and we are guilty of it as well, right? As Muslims, that we're not extending the hand sometimes in terms of starting that discussion. So we've actually had a number of discussions and events with other faiths. Like you guys are very familiar with our Fast with the Muslim, our Open Mosque Day, and actually things that we do year round, not just once or twice a year. That is all in hopes of explaining to people that they have access to their Muslim neighbors should they want to ask questions, right? And that's been working for us really well. And through those events, like a lot of people have walked out saying, you know what, I didn't know that. Thank you so much for telling me that. And we get to learn a little bit about maybe some about them as well, right? But in terms of that and our other programs like these diaper drives that we have and food drives, if I'm not mistaken, and many of you have been there volunteering, majority of the people that are coming, they're not Muslim. They're not Muslim. They're from other faiths, right? And they're seeing Muslims give back regardless of one's faith, right? So that's a very beautiful thing. So I would encourage myself and you to keep being engaged within our outreach, our dawah program here. And that's why we have that table outside. Carry something with you at all times. Somebody asks you a question. Let's just say you don't know the answer. It's okay. Just say, you know, it's a great question. I invite you to my mosque. Here you go. Just give them a flyer or brochure. Something as simple as that, God willing, inshallah. But again, just echoing what Sheikh Tariq is saying, you know, so just we got to be more engaged, you know. On that question, Sheikh Tariq, you are very civically engaged. We appreciate that. And of course, your community as well. I remember you saying that 2024, you're going to be there's going to be a lot of programs going on at OCIF as best as you can for outreach, right? I think engagement. Of course, the big question that we have to ask is, come November, what do we as Muslim Americans do in terms of voting? What happens at that time? We have two camps, we both have, you know, so help us out through this. Of course, I don't want to put you on the burner. It's a very sensitive question. I get it, but zooming out as a Muslim community, I think many people are confused or many people have questions or they're going this way or that way. Any thoughts or advice from your end, inshallah?
Sure. I'm going to turn off the mic.
Thank you so much, Tariq. That was beautiful, man. I really appreciate it. Questions, our brothers and sisters. A few minutes, we can take maybe one or two questions. I want to respect, of course, Sheikh Tariq's time. It's just an honor to have him and just to learn from him. Alhamdulillah. Sister Randa, inshallah. Before Sister Randa, though, anybody? Okay, I'll come to you. So I want to get some. Francis.
Assalamu alaikum, Sheikh. My question is about economy, or what kind of government would be a Muslim government? Is it going to be capitalist? Is it going to be communist? Is it going to be socialist? Is it going to be something completely new? What is it?
It's definitely not going to be communist, right? Probably not socialist, depending on how you define socialism. But if what's meant by communism and socialism is this idea that everybody is equal in their economics, that's utter nonsense. Why? Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says He makes some people wealthy and He withholds from other people. So you're going against the natural order, which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala deems a natural order multiple times in the Quran. It's never going to work. And that's why when communism attempted to get root in the Muslim world back in the 70s and the 80s, it was a very short-lived project, very short-lived. Why? Because the scholar said this is utter nonsense. It goes against the natural order. Now, this doesn't mean that some people have to be extremely wealthy and the rest of society extremely poor, but there will always be people who are wealthy and people who are poor. There will always be this. We can try and minimize the amount of poor people, and there are times in Muslim history where the amount of poor people is incredibly low, right? Even it's so incredibly low, you will have difficulty finding people to take your charity. This time has passed, and that time will come again. But in terms of a political system, it's left for the Muslims to decide what is in the best interest of the people and what's effective, right? And that includes technologies. It includes considering technologies, including considering, the geography, the political climate. But if your question is Islam and democracy at odds with each other? Absolutely not. No, there's no one who can make a strong argument for that. And somebody who tries to make an argument for that, what they'll eventually do, or what they'll end up doing, is pointing out certain policies that are codified in American or British law, and say, look, see, we can't do it because it allows homosexuality. That democracy in itself doesn't allow homosexuality. Clearly, because for the past several centuries, it was banned in democratic societies. So democracy is a system of administration. It does not automatically connote a set of laws. The Muslims can fill that. And I'm not saying that Islam must be democratic. It's up to the Muslims to decide what is the proper way of governing the Muslims that will bring justice and ensure the safety and security of the people. You're welcome.
Thank you, Sheikh Tariq. And I really appreciate you simplifying it for us. It's a heavy topic, and I appreciate it. I see Sister Randa. One question, Sheikh, is off the topic regarding eating and drinking by using your left hand. Is that something we should be doing? Should we be using the right hand? If you can just educate us on that.
Yeah, so the Prophet, peace be upon him, told us to eat with our right hand. Why? Because the devil eats with the left, right? So Islam is about the right, doing things with your right, including eating. Some scholars said it's impermissible, it's haram, it's sinful to eat with your left hand, while other scholars said it's discouraged. It's not forbidden, but you shouldn't do it. That's the opinion that I tend to lean towards. It's not prohibited. You're not going to get sins for eating with your left hand, but it's something that you shouldn't do, and you should eat with your right hand. Now, if you are left-handed, right, you can get used to eating with your right hand. You could do it.
This is really quick. As a Muslim community, do we have any classes or step programs to help us navigate the political waters, if that's the route that we want to take?
I'm sure you can find individual workshops, individual lectures about this topic. But we are in need of a much more organized effort to educate the Muslim community about civics and civic engagement. It's time for that now. I think the Muslim community is ready.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. I just want to respect Sheikh Tariq's time. Sheikh Tariq went a little bit over it. Please forgive us, inshallah. But again, let's get a loud Allahu Akbar on 3 for Sheikh Tariq. 1, 2, 3. Inshallah. Allah bless you. Thank you, Sheikh Tariq, as always,
Thank you
for
so
helping
much.
us out with the questions and our phenomenal discussion that we had here as well. Brothers and sisters, just some announcements. Please be patient with me, and then we'll be good to go from there. Number one is I just want to give a shout out to my man Francisco. Francisco was doing the translation today. Thank you so much. He's sacrificing his personal attention to Sheikh Tariq to, of course, translate and help out the community here as well. So I want to thank Brother Francisco for that as well. Number two, again, as we request week in and week out, we do need help. A few minutes, brothers and sisters. We do need help with our class setup. As you know, on Friday and Sunday, we have 2 classes weekly. We need help before and after class as well. So please, if you haven't as of yet signed up on the link that we send out to sign up for the classes, we would need everyone's help. So if you can, of course, offer some help today after class for 15, 20, 30 minutes, or whatever time you can help us out with, that would be greatly appreciated, because we want to make sure that once we come in, everything is set, right? And that takes a lot of effort, and it shouldn't be on just 1 or 2 people. So I want to make sure that we do our best to offer at least once or twice a month, if we can, to help us. So again, please let me know. That'll be great. Number 3, don't forget about this coming Saturday. We have our free backpack and basic school supply giveaway. This is all part of our da'wah, our outreach effort to the greater community. So if anybody here is in need of course, backpack for the kids or basic school supplies, it's a free distribution that we're having this coming Saturday starting at 11:30. You can enter for the Placentia side on the back. We do need volunteers, so that registration link went out on the WhatsApp groups. If for some reason you're not on the WhatsApp groups, please let me know so I can add you. But I think majority of you, if not all of you, are. You can go ahead and use that link to sign up, because we do need a lot of help that day. We are anticipating more people than usual, just because of we're doing the backpack giveaway, and the same day it's a free health fair as well. So we have students coming from UCI and I think locally here as well, that right as they get their backpack supplies, at the same time, parallel, we're going to do a health fair as well, so you can get your blood pressure, glucose, etc., all that good stuff checked out as well. Again, all that is free this coming Saturday. Please make sure to pencil that in as well, God willing. And just a reminder from myself and everyone, we're always looking to improve. We love constructive criticism. Be easy on us, but we do love constructive criticism. So if you see something within our classroom, whatever it is, whether the pizza's not good enough, whatever it is, right? We welcome all suggestions, and so please, always, you can reach out to me privately. You can email me, text me, whatever works for you, to let us know so we can improve. And at the same time, in addition to those improvements, if there are things that make you feel uncomfortable, or things that happen, if those are not addressed, we won't know, right? So if we just assume, hey, everything is going well, and you're not addressing any concerns in the community, particularly the classes or anything like that, then we don't know. So again, if you see something and it's something that, you know what, this is something that should be addressed, please do let us know. I don't want to make anybody feel uncomfortable, but I would encourage you all to just, let us know if there's some improvements that we need. And we're not perfect, nowhere close to it, but I hope you would see week in and week out that we are trying to make sure that we have a family here and that we work together as well. But we're not perfect, so please do help us out with that. Any improvements or encouragement or suggestions are greatly welcomed, inshallah. Donation box is here, of course. As we say, should you want to cut us a check for $1 million to help us out, that'll be great, inshallah. But if not, please, you can scan the QR code, you can drop anything in, whatever works for you, it would be greatly appreciated. And of course, snacks, good stuff here. Again, thank you to all the volunteers that step up week in and week out to help us out. I can't thank you enough. The best reward is the reward with the Creator, with Allah. But I really, by extension, just want to thank you guys for sacrificing 30, 40 an hour sometimes to be here to make sure everything is set, right? So thank you all very much. That will conclude our class, inshallah. But please, on your way out, grab something, and the tables and chairs we do need to put away. We have racks, I believe, on both sides. Let's just make sure that the tables and chairs go on the racks and they're not overflowing, because then we have to take the chairs out and kind of level them out. So let's put the place back the way it was found. And if there's any trash around you, please do let me know, and if you can help me out as well. Sister Robin? Question is the health fair going to include vaccinations? I'm not sure. I can find it and I can let you know if you like. Okay, perfect. Thank you so much. May Allah bless you, Sheikh Tariq, as usual. Thank you so much. Again, brothers and sisters, if you guys can help me out in the kitchen and also with the tables and chairs, I would greatly appreciate it. We'll see everyone on Friday, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum.